Really a pleasure to be here this morning with you all. I'm just going to jump straight into the presentation, and I look forward to chatting with you all afterwards. So the AI Accessibility Project brings together faculty and student researchers from architecture, computer science, human sciences, and marketing to design and test new building technologies which leverage advanced material fabrication and AI to create a more intuitive and accessible built environment for individuals with vision impairment. And before I discuss the outcomes and methods of the project, I'd like to briefly mention the context we're working in. So as of the last survey data, 2.2 billion people globally and 32 million people in the United States reported experiencing vision loss and impairment, with the total national economic burden of vision loss and blindness, according to the CDC, due specifically to reduced labor force participation, estimated to be $16.2 billion annually. I'm showing some of these stats currently on screen. Somewhere between 10 and 15% of individuals with vision impairment, according to the American Council for the Blind, are completely blind, and the remainder have varying types and degrees of vision impairment, including blurred vision, loss of central vision, limited field of vision, macular degeneration, and others, which might mean visually experiencing the Parthenon like this, and I'm showing the Parthenon as viewed by someone with cataracts, the Salk Institute like this. This is with some central vision loss. Ranchamp, the church in France, shown here with, from the point of view of peripheral vision loss, and then the interior of the Guggenheim like this. This is with spots from diabetic retinopathy. Accompanying this variability of visual perspectives is often a more deliberate application of other sensory means for interacting with the built environment, including touch, so feeling the ground or building surfaces or light. Sound, listening for audio cues while navigating or self-orienting in space, like instructions from a crosswalk or the sound of traffic or elevators in a hotel lobby. And even smell. I've previously organized a number of accessible multisensory learning activities in small Mediterranean towns, where a number of vision-impaired students, participants in those programs, have proven to me that you can, in fact, navigate a place by the smell of the bakery. How is it then that we, as architects and designers, can facilitate the multisensory accessibility of space? And by designing with the blind in mind, and I'm borrowing this expression from my good friend and colleague Chris Downey, who's a practicing architect based in San Francisco, how can we create a fuller and more intuitive sensory experience of architecture which benefits everyone? So our team addressed this question in two ways. First, with the development of a smartphone application, which builds on technology developed a year prior to this project by 3 faculty members who are now part of our larger team. This technology included the creation of a mobile phone app designed to provide user-customizable descriptions, navigation instructions, and alerts, and can be paired with Meta's Aria glasses for hands-free use. And on screen, I'm showing the app and with the 3 features, shown that we focused on: description, navigation, and alerts. Funding from last year's ICAT major seed grant supported the continued testing and development of the app. Here I'm showing the app being tested with a participant who's trying to identify and locate clothing items using short descriptions. And I'm showing here a participant testing a variety of interior navigation scenarios using QR codes at Gilbert Place, including how capably the app enables a user to identify and navigate around obstacles in a space. The aim of the application is to transform AI from a static tool into a dynamic, user-centered system by designing the system architecture to evolve alongside each user, gradually adapting to their specific needs. The diagram I have on screen illustrates how deep learning can support user-specific AI training with the integration of multi-layer neural networks and models into a continuous cycle of feedback, analysis, and refinement. These developments were featured at an interactive 2-day exhibition at the grand opening of the Innovation Campus building in Alexandria last February, which was attended by university leadership, alumni, donors, the state's elected representatives, and more than 1,000 members of the general public from within and beyond the Northern Virginia and Washington, D.C. areas. And it also was presented during a generative AI workshop hosted by MIT back in May. I'm showing some photos from the exhibit at the Innovation Campus in Alexandria. And the second approach our team took focused more on the AI accessible design of the built environment. So I organized and instructed 2 research seminars involving more than 35 graduate and undergraduate students in the fall and spring of the prior academic year to prepare an immersive cube exhibition at the Moss Arts Center. The exhibition, which was supported by on-site mobility training by the Virginia Department for the Blind and Vision Impaired, gave attendees the opportunity to interact with 5 redesigned spaces while using a white cane blindfolded. These included a residential threshold, hospital hallway, retail outlet, sidewalk crosswalk, and museum, which were selected based on focus group feedback about some of the most challenging spaces for individuals with vision impairment to navigate. And I'm going to briefly walk through each of these spaces to identify some of the featured building elements moving counterclockwise around the cube in the same way attendees experienced the exhibition. So the residential threshold introduced attendees to a system of live QR codes which provided navigation instructions and spatial descriptions throughout the exhibition. And you can see the QR codes in this photograph on the mailbox and just to the right of the door under the light. The threshold itself was accessed by a tactile guide strip adjacent to a handrail with musical tiles embedded in its base so that the pitch increased as you tapped them with your cane on approach to the door. The hospital hallway challenged attendees to find the correct patient room by reading tactile signage and featured AI-generated landscape projections of the windows, the fake windows we had, projected windows opposite, together with 3D guide strips along the wall. The retail outlet challenged attendees to find a grocery item and clothing product using any combination of 3D printed shelving indicators, QR codes, and our app's description feature. The sidewalk crosswalk exhibit included QR code sidewalk tiles for information about the space and a hands-free AI information station which enabled attendees to dialogue about an urban scene before proceeding to an illuminated crosswalk. And then finally, the museum space likewise included AI information stations and showcased an exceptionally well-designed smart handrail, what we're calling a smart handrail, which looped its way through the exhibit, providing both tactile cues and QR code navigation instructions. I have a quick time-lapse video I'm going to show of the setup of the exhibition and its attendance. Really impressive. Kudos to the students for setting it up in one day, overseeing the exhibition for a day, and then taking it all down in one day. And you will have noticed a wheelchair in the setup. Another challenge we had was making sure it was ADA compliant. We had a number of visitors who were visiting using wheelchairs, so we needed to make sure they could comfortably get through all of our exhibits. And we made that happen. The exhibition was attended by 172 people over the course of 5 hours, and its pieces were represented in a lower gallery exhibition at Moss Arts at the end of May, together with artifacts of the design process, including additional 3D printed handrails, CNC milled guide strips, and records of the team's dialogues with vision impaired individuals and organizations. The project team also had the opportunity to permanently deploy a number of AI-accessible building elements at the Burkeville Lodge for the Blind in Burkeville, Virginia, to improve the safety, accessibility, and sensory engagement of a newly designed memory garden space. I'm showing photos from the construction of that space. In addition to a canopy, trellis walls, and planter boxes to better enclose the space, students created tactile surfacing and 3D printed QR codes to facilitate the AI accessibility research team's mobile app with conveying directional instructions and information about the lodge. So this is a 3D printed handrail. It says, read the QR code opposite, basically. And there's a 3D printed QR code on the wall in different parts of the lodge that help visitors to get information about the lodge and navigate the space more fluidly. These installations were jointly supported by private donors and a student engagement grant from the Office of Student Affairs. Throughout the project, the team centered the development of its designs on the perspectives and feedback of individuals with vision impairment. Students preparing building elements for the Cube exhibition, for example, engaged in orientation and mobility training with the Department for the Blind and Vision Impaired. This involved tutorials in tactile teaching methods and digital aids, and simulations of different types and degrees of vision impairment, so wearing goggles to simulate total blindness, tunnel vision, loss of central vision, and blurred sight, and mobility training with a cane in and around our school. The team also deployed organized interviews, hosted focus group sessions, and organized live testing of in-progress building elements and technology. In one such activity, participants wrote "I want" statements about the ways in which they would like the built environment to better reflect their unique needs and perspectives. Braden, a freshman in high school with partial vision and hearing loss, wrote, "It would be nice if the curb was more noticeable, that all stairs had railings, that he likes it when you can see grade changes easily, and thinks it would also be nice if words were bigger on public signage." Notably, the team also innovated a hands-on model-making workshop to solicit feedback on the use of AI and the accessibility of the built environment. I'm showing that workshop in action now, a bunch of people working on models at a table. The workshop challenged vision-impaired participants to create a space between two portals, which facilitated navigation and provided a comfortable place to sit. Participants developed their design ideas using AI, soliciting suggestions for interior layouts and materials. This workshop session was piloted with attendees of the National Federation of the Blind's Virginia Convention in Norfolk in November, and organized a second time for the School of Architecture's Blind Design Workshop, which I organize and oversee every spring. The AI Accessibility Workshop session, before I move on, will also be featured during a professional meeting of the American Institute of Architects, the AIA in Richmond, in a couple of weeks. The team was invited to conduct a 90-minute modeling session with practicing architects to spark discussion and facilitate understanding about the potential of AI to facilitate the design of more inclusive multisensory architecture. We faced a number of notable challenges worth critically reflecting on as we move forward with our research. First, securing an adequate sample size of vision-impaired participants for on-site testing was difficult, evidencing that transportation is still among the most prominent spatial challenges for individuals with vision impairment. Some recent solutions to this problem have been to pay for individuals to come from greater distances. And then also we're considering potentially redesigning certain testing protocols so that they're not location specific and we can sort of take them on the road. Another logistical challenge was the coordination of contributions from the different disciplines represented on our team. In our case, architecture students more or less took the lead, and the functionality of AI wasn't as integrated as it could have been if they had been more deliberately designed and built together. So I'm showing a combination, a kind of haphazard combination on screen of information panel, QR code, maneuverable smartphone, and tactile handrail. Again, that could have been more deliberately designed or brought together, and we'll be working exactly on this in the next phase of our project. We'll be continuing our efforts to integrate these technologies in the domain of accessible tourism. So our team was able to leverage the development of its AI accessible building elements into the acquisition of a seed grant offered by the Pamplin College of Business and developing relationships with destination management organizations in Northern Virginia. We will be developing this this academic year, a consumer-centric AI-powered building system for adaptive tourism experiences designed to enhance spatial comprehension and engagement in cultural environments like museums, heritage sites, and destination districts. Last week, I presented our work at the AI Design Practices Conference hosted by the Association of Collegiate Schools of Architecture, the ACSA in Boston, Massachusetts, and I'll be presenting again at the 2025 Engagement Scholarship Consortium Conference in Roanoke next week. We're currently working on exhibiting the pieces we developed throughout the project at 2 additional venues, and we're also preparing a proposal for federal funding to support a larger scale of co-design, and that's where we're at right now. Thanks very much.
So, thank you so much. What questions do we have in the room or online? If you're online, go ahead and punch those in. I'll pause just a second to let you come up with your questions. Actually, I have some announcements I forgot to make at the beginning, so I'll do those now while you're thinking of your questions. Sorry about that. I'm going to interrupt the train of things.
Do your thing.
Tomorrow, Pose Shadows is going to be at the Lyric. So Pose Shadows is a show that was developed with an ICAT grant. Check that out. Monday at midnight Eastern Time is when grant proposals are due for seed grants and faculty mini-seed grants. Don't forget that. And also the Virginia Tech Science Festival is coming up on November 15th. If you missed that deadline earlier this week about getting your exhibits in and you still want to do it, just talk to me because I could extend that for you if you have something amazing. And also we have some slots open for Hokie for a Day. If you'd like to exhibit and talk to fifth graders, I've got some slots open in the next few weeks. So now you've had time to come up with your questions. I'll be right there, Ash.
I just have 2 questions. This is really cool and fascinating. My first question was, with the thing that you built, how feasible or like affordable would that be to actually implement in a community, all the different doors with the braille and stuff? And then my other question is that I wondered if there's research out there on if simulation helps architecture students build better, if that makes sense, or more accessibly. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for those questions. So the feasibility of deployment they're in a very rough state right now, these building elements. And the process of figuring out what would be feasible to deploy in communities is its own project. So in that way, we're doing that now, let's say, as an example, with some of those ideas we have for cultural spaces, cultural management organizations, like creating handrails with embedded QR codes and tactile indicators. So that in itself is its own process, working out how to deploy them in actual spaces, thinking how they can be built in a more robust, durable way for a lot of engagement, let's say, by the public. Each one would have its own story, is what I'm saying. So I'm kind of answering your question without answering it. In terms of simulation, I really appreciate this question. We absolutely are not trying to simulate the lived experience of disability when we do these types of things. It's just to give designers some sense of the functional challenges associated with vision impairment. And I've done these types of activities both with vision impairment when I do design projects with my studios that we're focused on sort of multisensory design and specifically for individuals with vision impairment. And we recently did, and it was featured on our local news station, a wheelchair rollabout on campus. We did that a couple of days ago. This is important, I think, these types of immersive, so my students, in other words, got into wheelchairs and they figured out that slopes that aren't code compliant are exceptionally difficult to try and get up in a wheelchair. But this is especially relevant and important for young designers to be aware of because they're going to be tasked with designing for these challenges. So Thank you for the question. Those were great. Appreciate it.
Great talk, Andrew, and wonderful work. You had a slide where you said that you wish the AI had been better integrated. That slide.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the process of how the faculty and students work together and how that might change in order to make that be better integrated?
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate the question. This is something we're reflecting on. I think a smaller, a more deliberately organized team of students would have helped. So I oversaw the two workshops in the fall and the spring that led up to this exhibition. And most of the students I had were from architecture. So the workshop took place in architecture. Maybe if we had been in a kind of Switzerland, like a more neutral territory, we could have, the computer science students would have been more interested in joining us. I don't know if that was an issue. Probably not. I'm just brainstorming now out loud. But basically, we had architects sort of leading the design of these spaces, which essentially, for 2 semesters, which essentially meant that the integration of any kind of like computer tech came very much towards the end of this process. And I thought that how could that have been better coordinated? Maybe just the faculty, maybe something a little bit more along the lines of ID Pro, which is a program we have in our university that sort of sits students down from different disciplines on a regular basis to meet together, as opposed to making it sort of voluntary to participate, like the 2 workshops that I organized. I don't know. Those are some initial thoughts and ideas, but it's not something I've. Also, it was like coordination of faculty schedules. There's some practical things like that. Like as soon as the faculty team understands that one person is in charge, then the rest sort of that we also have lots of other things going on. So there were just some practical challenges, but I think a more focused effort like the one we're doing now. So we're working together with, as I said, with Pamplin, and then with a number of tourism agencies or organizations in Alexandria in Northern Virginia. I think a more concerted effort in terms of what it is we want to accomplish. So in that particular case, it'll be how it is we can engage with heritage spaces would also help to bring some of these specializations and these different expertises together. Because this one was the challenge was quite broad in terms of what it is that could be designed. So that's a sort of stream of consciousness reflection on what could be improved moving forward. But we're definitely still talking about this. Yeah. Thanks very much for the question.
That was a great summary. I'll be right back there. That was a great summary of transdisciplinary work. Well done.
Hi, Andrew. This is really an amazing presentation. Thank you very much. So I'm really impressed of your involvement of the students in your work. This is really amazing. I'm curious to know more about the nature of the course. It was a graduate course. Was it like a seminar or something like that?
No, this was an undergraduate seminar. Yeah.
Oh, this is even more interesting. So, and I can see the excitement in their faces. So I'm curious, did you collect any type of surveys or perception from the students? What was their perception about the experience?
Yeah, we didn't, and I thanks, Iman. We didn't, and I should do this. I don't have much experience in this, so we should talk about exactly how to do this. We did collect surveys from the participants who visited the exhibition. So that is something we're still working through to assess the results. Generally, I trust in the capabilities and the enthusiasm of the students of our program in the School of Architecture. And I have yet to be disappointed or let down, let's say. So putting together an undergraduate research seminar. It was a big success in the sense that the students really dedicated their time and energy to creating some very interesting proposals that benefited our project's research. And by the end of it, we felt like we'd been through battle together and were, kind of a family after the experience. But just to say, it was really rewarding, and they made a significant contribution to us taking steps forward in this domain. And it was in total probably between 25 and 35 students, depending on how you want to count. Also some of the students who are participating from computer science, marketing, and human sciences. Thanks for the question, Yvonne.
Thank you.
There's a question there in the back.
Oh, okay. I have two questions.
Sure.
Sorry. One, is it necessary to be able to read Braille to fully experience this experience? I'm asking because I'm given to understand that the proportion of visually impaired people who read Braille is quite low. And so I'm wondering if they can interact in other ways, how are they what are the different mechanisms that they're directed to these sort of QR codes? And my other question is, you mentioned partnering with these different organizations that support people with visual impairments. I was wondering if any members of your actual design team are visually impaired or otherwise representative of the disability community.
Yeah, so the short answer is no, it's not necessary to read Braille to fully experience the exhibit. And not to give a lecture about this, but it's super important when we're designing accessible and inclusive spaces that there are overlapping mechanisms or methods of communicating in alternative ways, so that we want to have Braille, we want to also have tactile indicators, we want there to be maybe high visual contrast, we want there to be some redundancy, let's say, in the way that we're communicating spatial ideas accessibly. So no, you absolutely do not need to read Braille to experience some of these exhibits. This QR code, actually, the one that's on screen on the information panel, is tactile. It's not showing like that, but you can feel that it's a QR code. And the QR codes that were deployed throughout the exhibition were intended to be read also with your fingers. We have one member on the team who's, she's with us today, Relisa, who's vision impaired. We regularly engage with the Department for the Blind and Vision Impaired. We engage with them throughout this process. They're one of our, just as a kind of brief explanation, but they're one of the vocational rehabilitation agencies that services individuals with disability in our state. Every state has a VR agency, and some states have one VR agency serving the entire state, and other states split up the VR agencies into an agency that serves exclusively people with vision impairment, and then an agency that serves everybody else. And that's the case in our state. So DBVI is that organization, and I've been partnering with them not only on this project, but for the last 4 years to prepare the blind design workshop, which I showed some photos from as a way of getting feedback from the community. But this is a project that takes place every spring and has given the opportunity given let's say between 12 and 15 vision impaired young people the opportunity to engage in architecture, to learn about architecture every spring.
Well, thank you so much. We're out of time. Please continue the conversations. There's a few more donuts over there, a little bit more coffee. So continue the conversations as you wish. Thanks so much for sharing your work with us.
Much.
Thank you all for being here. We'll be here again next Friday with more mind-blowing presentations, more coffee, more donuts. So I hope we'll see you then. And until then, have a great weekend.
Yeah, thanks everybody.